Okay, so I'm here talking to Cheryl Halpern, who's nominated filmmaker behind 2 films in competition. Welcome to London.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.
And thank you for joining us. If you could tell us about both films,
Okay.
give us a title and the synopsis, because they're both documentaries.
That
and
they
just
are.
Give us a brief background to what they're about, and then we can go from there.
Okay. So the longer of the two is The Two Zions, the living legacy of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon.
Right.
And what it does is really celebrate the shared spiritual and cultural roots of two peoples, the Ethiopian Orthodox Christians and the Ethiopian Jews. And they have enjoyed this shared legacy from the visit of Makeda, the Queen of Sheba, to King Solomon in Jerusalem in approximately 950 BC.
Right.
And it is as vibrant today as it was then.
Why?
It's a matter of faith
Right.
and history. So
Do you think history repeats itself? Do you believe that?
I don't think that history necessarily repeats itself. I don't think people necessarily learn the lessons of history.
Ain't that the truth?
And those that do and share it with one another will follow a similar course of culture and lifestyle.
Right. Okay.
So in the case of the Two Zions, you had a very strong female monarch in Aksum, in the land, the kingdom of Sheba, which has biblical rooting, who travels because of what she hears through trade to the wise King Solomon, who reigns in Jerusalem. And she wants to meet this wise monarch and ask her questions about life and whatever riddles she wants to challenge him with. And the story of this particular engagement is found in the Jewish book of prophets, the book of Kings, the first volume. And there are only roughly 10 sentences that are devoted in that volume to this visit.
Right.
However, the Ethiopians have a much longer narrative, which was codified in a book called the Keber Nagast, The Glory of Kings. And it details the history of Makeda going to Jerusalem, returning back to her home in Aksum. She had conceived a child with Solomon, gave birth to the child on the trip back to Aksum. But according to the Keber Nagast, she was so moved and taken with Solomon's answers to her questions and what she observed that she embraced the teachings of Solomon, which were the teachings of Moses given by God on Mount Sinai.
Right.
And she accepted the God of Solomon. So she brought all that back with her to her people in Aksum. And according to the patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the entire country accepted the God of Solomon and the teachings of Moses, and that all of Ethiopia, which was then called Cush, was in fact Jewish.
Right.
And Ethiopia was never colonized by the Europeans. What you did have were Christian missionaries that would eventually make their way through Africa and come into Ethiopia, which is how they learned about Jesus. And the church accepted, those that accepted the teachings of Jesus became the churchmen.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not the acceptance of Jesus to the exclusion of the teachings of Moses. So, for example, the Sabbath, as detailed in the Old Testament, is still the Sabbath within the Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
Right.
The day of our Lord, Sunday, is an addition to the Sabbath, as detailed. So they follow the old ways of Moses, the Old Testament, as in the Torah, and then they have added the teachings of Jesus to that. So circumcision on the 8th day, they still do. The laws of what species one can eat or not eat, as detailed in the Torah, they follow as well. The observances in the church with regard to incense and the musical instruments that are used are in keeping with what was the temple observance at the time of King Solomon. By the same token, go into an Ethiopian synagogue and you're going to see a similar observance with regard to music that accompanies the prayers, as was on the steps leading up to the Temple of Solomon. So it's a fascinating legacy from that visit, as I said, till today.
And what about wishmasters?
Wishmakers.
Makers, sorry.
Wishmasters.
Sorry.
I wish we were all wishmasters.
Sorry, wishmakers.
Oh, come on. When we wish upon a star. Yeah. Wishmakers.
Because that's a completely different.
Completely.
As documentaries often are, you often get completely. There's no connection. What is it? Can you explain what that's about?
Oh. I went to go buy a bottle of wine when I was visiting Jerusalem.
Nice. You've got me at wine.
Okay, so I went to go buy a bottle of wine to go give to a buddy as a gift who lives in Jerusalem. And I go into the liquor store and I say, what's a really good bottle that I haven't had exported to the United States?
So it's completely random?
Completely random, but I don't believe things are necessarily random. Things are, there's a Yiddish word called bashert, things are destined.
So you believe in that?
Do I believe in destiny?
Yeah,
yes.
You do? Okay.
I do. So this random event, as you suggest, going in and buying the bottle of wine, and the proprietor says, Cheryl, take this bottle of tulips, black tulip, with you as a gift and try it. I said, okay. So I try it. It's a really good wine. And I go back to the proprietor and I say, I liked it. And my friend liked it as well. So since it's not as yet available in the US, send me a case. He says,
really?
True. So he says, okay, I'll send you a case, but I got to tell you something about this particular winery.
Right, okay.
What about it?
Because I know this, I've read that, I just should let you know that I know the story, but having seen part of it and read the bio as well, but this is for the benefit of the camera, of course.
Right. So he then goes to tell me that this is a unique winery that was built in a residential adult special needs community where the people of the community are in fact making the wine.
So at what point are you thinking that, I'm assuming at that moment, you haven't thought, this could be an interesting story, you're just interested.
I'm interested. First of all, we have had family members. My cousin is unfortunately somebody who has been afflicted with Down syndrome.
Right.
So to suddenly hear that there is this winery making an excellent wine that is employing people who have whatever handicaps they have to the extent that they can be engaged in the production, I thought was really exemplary. And it did hit home, and I wanted to go up there.
But at this moment in time, just to see what this is all about, and there's no sort of story whizzing around in the back of your head.
No, I'm going to go buy a case of wine, send
it.
I want to go up there. And I say to the proprietor, I said, do you have the telephone number? Right there in the liquor store. do you have the telephone number? I want to call and speak to this guy. His name is Roe Itzhaki. And he says, sure, let's call him. Okay, we call Roe right there in the liquor store, and I say, you know, I'm here, I'm taking wine, I'm going to have it shipped to the U.S., I really like it, but I want to learn more about your production with these individuals from Kfar Tikva, the Village of Hope. The name alone just kind of blew me away.
At this point, he's saying, up you come. Did he?
He said, well, sure, you're more than welcome. You know, we have a visitor center.
Lovely.
And I said, well, what are you doing tomorrow? He said, I'm going to be working at the winery. I said, good, I'll be there at 1 o'clock. And off I went.
And
Following day.
So you got to the winery.
Met these people and was humbled.
Right.
And at that moment, there was no question that I needed to share their story because, you know, I grew up in a religious home. My father, rabbi, and mother, you know, also engaging with community. The golden rule of doing for others as we would want to have done for ourselves. This winery, this operation, these people really, as I used the word exemplified earlier, they exemplified the golden rule in all of its aspects. And unfortunately, much of what we see, be it on the television, be it on online, is not the feel-good story of people doing for one another. So that became my mission, my goal.
So tell me about you. Tell me about, I suppose, not necessarily your life, but how you became a filmmaker. What did you do previously? Is this always what you've been doing? Were there other things you were doing that led you to become a producer director? How did it all happen? I mean, maybe you're a teacher or a policewoman. I've got no idea.
Oh, I did all of that. And yet I'm being serious.
So what? Okay. So what did you do in general before? What was the main thing you were doing?
I'm a storyteller.
Right.
I grew up in a home where my parents always had visitors.
This is Connecticut?
This is in New Haven, Connecticut.
Okay.
So being a pulpit rabbi, my father and mother were on call 24/7 for their congregants. But Dad was also a clergyman to the veterans in the VA hospital.
Right, okay.
And so he dealt with the diversity of individuals. And we would have the priests and the ministers, everybody was welcome
You seem
at
very,
our table.
You seem very, this is a compliment, you seem very, not relaxed is the wrong word, very, how can I explain this? You seem just very at one and very, just, I don't know, you just come across as happy with your lot. That might be a way to describe it. Is that a good way to describe you?
It is.
Content, that's the word I'm looking for. You seem very content.
I like who I am, if that's what you're trying to...
Yeah, no, it really is a compliment. I mean,
Thank you.
It really is. I mean, obviously I interview lots of filmmakers. Sorry, I interrupted you then. But you do seem very content with life. I mean, have you always been that way?
I think I was raised that way. Look, we all have challenges that we have to deal with. But there is a prayer that one says when one wakes up in the morning, which, again, I learned within the Jewish religion and going to school and my parents, were basically, you thank God for the breath, the fresh breath that is restored every day. So regardless of what we have to deal with, whatever difficulties, whatever wondrous activities we might be doing, the fact that every moment is precious needs to be recognized and celebrated. So it's not getting caught up in what could have been, what should have been in terms of yesterday, because we can't turn back the hands of time, nor getting caught up in the anxiety
So are you
of what will be in the future.
Are you a glass half full person?
Very much so.
Right, okay.
I don't know any other way to be. It's now 30 years since I was facing my own mortality, looking at surgery that was going to be 13 hours long, somewhat experimental. I had 3 children, young children at that moment in time. And my neurosurgeon, who was a man from India, he would not do the surgery until he met my support system. He had to see my husband, my children, my parents, and they shared together, they bonded together, both he and the family, in terms of what he was going to be doing.
That's
what
amazing. So he wouldn't do it until he knew everything was connected.
Yeah, because everything is connected. And my 10-year-old daughter had to assume the responsibility of being the mother figure. And this, my parents, after I came out of surgery, they provided the care and the attention that everybody needed as well. So, yes, the glass is always half full. Thank God I had Dr. Sen, and thank God my children rose to the occasion, and my husband rose to the occasion, and my parents rose to the occasion, and I'm here today to continue telling stories.
And I rudely interrupted you because I do this all the time. I went off at a tangent, but then suddenly something popped into my head, and then I just needed to ask you about that. Apologies. So
no apologies.
There was me asking you about how you got to become a filmmaker, and like I said, I kind of interrupted. So please carry on with the story.
So, growing up in that home, storytelling, listening to each other was part and parcel of daily life. And when I went on to college, WKCR FM 89.9 on your radio dial kind of attracted my attention. And it was more storytelling. So whether it was a classical music afternoon with Cheryl, and we would talk about the different composers and musicians with regard to classical music.
I love classical music,
So, let's talk about Saint-Saëns, and let's talk about Beethoven, or
Chopin.
maybe we want to get Chopin, or maybe jazz, Thelonious Monk. Go the whole gamut, to reviewing Broadway shows, or even the news is telling a story. So I started with KCR, and then I was a Soviet studies major. Fast forward into more of the political arena, married, and my husband and I are involved with Ronald Reagan. Involved with what was then Citizens for America, a grassroots organization to challenge what we call the pork barreling, the random spending of taxpayer money for pet projects of those who serve in Congress.
So are you, I'm not making any kind of judgment here, are you a Republican?
I am a Republican.
Right. I've got but I just wondered.
But I've also worked for
President.
No, but I'm going to tell you, but I'm also, the Clintons.
Right, okay.
I'd like to say I'm a Republican who believes in working for the benefit of the country with all.
Right, okay. So there's me interrupting you. So
no, because there's part of this is going to be the Clinton story.
Right, okay.
Start with Reagan and get to meet his vice president, George Bush Sr., President 41.
Of course it was, yeah.
And
He was a lot younger then, we should point out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I'm a little bit of a, what's called a chutzpahnik, somebody who has a little bit of arrogance. And I'm over, you constantly introduce yourselves in the receiving line at the White House. Hello, I'm Cheryl Halpern. And one time I say, I'm looking forward to when I don't have to introduce myself to you. Get a letter from Vice President Bush about a week later. Dear Cheryl, you see, I remembered your name. And that started a friendship that continued to when he became president.
Wow.
And at that point in time, I wanted to work in government. And the thought from the White House was presented, what about serving as an ambassador? But again, my children were young. I wasn't prepared to leave the country.
Yeah.
And given my Soviet studies background, my radio background, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty was an ideal fit. And so I went and became a member of that board. At the time, just preceding the close of the curtain on the Soviet Union.
88, 89, something like that, isn't it?
1989.
Right, okay.
So it continued serving there, and then President Clinton is elected.
Yeah, what we're talking about, 92, is it 92?
Mm-hmm. You're very good. I'm impressed.
We're going to get right after Trump in a minute, don't worry.
Time out on that one.
Let's not go there.
I'm not in anymore. No more government service.
Yes.
But President Clinton decided to consolidate all of America's international broadcasting.
Right.
And do away with what was called the United States Information Agency.
So was that more regional then? Is that what you were saying? Was it more like a regional?
No, it was like Voice of America.
Right, okay.
And then, yes, you had the regional radio and television Marti de Cuba. But instead of having some within USIA and Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty as a self-standing grantee, the Congress, together with the President, basically disassembled USIA, put the broadcasting into what was called the Broadcasting Board of Governors, and the other functions of USIA went over to the State Department. So it was an appropriate disassembling and merging. So I was brought forward by President Clinton to serve with the Broadcasting Board of Governors in that capacity, and continued through his administration.
Yeah, he was elected twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
And then President Bush, 43.
Junior. Yeah, junior.
Oh, he doesn't, not junior.
Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, he's elected, and given my service internationally, I was invited by the White House to transfer over to domestic broadcasting and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which I did. And
so we're kind of starting to transition into TV and away from radio. Okay, so I can kind of see where this is going now.
You can.
I can,
good.
yeah.
I'm glad. So the Corporation for Public Broadcasting actually elects its own chair. It's
Right.
not an appointment by the president. And I was elected to serve as chair for 2 terms,
Yeah.
during which it was glorious. I mean, the programming that we were able to initiate was really educational in its focus.
So it's public service broadcasting, I guess.
Public service.
Right, okay.
But for example, with the growing Hispanic population in the United States, you need to introduce children to one another so that they can accept each other. And there was a wonderful program that was brought forward to us called Maya and Miguel, where they were 2 school children, and the stories of how they would bring their friends from the classroom into their home and meet the abuela and learn about the food and the people. And I don't know, demystify is not the word, but It was really to create a better understanding of what the Hispanic home was like and introduce that home into the public life.
Yeah, dare I say the white middle class American, is that the right way to sort of...
Let's just say it's the broader American home that was suddenly introduced to the Hispanic home.
Right. Almost said WASP then, but that's probably the wrong...
That would be an inappropriate term.
But yeah, it's probably inappropriate. I get where you're going, it's to enlighten people, really.
It's the next step of Sesame Street.
Yeah.
You've got the neighborhood for the younger child, and Maya Miguel was for a slightly older child.
Right, okay. No, I get that.
So I enjoyed the CPB, and we still had radio. We still had National Public Radio at the time. But when my name, this was at the end of the Bush administration, my name came out of the Senate Committee for Renomination. This was Senator Inouye from Hawaii, who was the chair. I needed a full Senate confirmation to continue my service with the CPB. And at that moment in time, Senator Reid was not putting forward any names in anticipation of the Democratic incoming administration.
Right, okay.
So my name sort of fell into what we'll call senatorial limbo.
Right, so you were sort of stuck.
Well, I was just sort of, stuck in limbo, and a friend of mine who has been an Emmy Award-winning television producer called. He said, "Cheryl, I've been waiting for you not to be in government service. Will you come be my partner and let's produce together?"
Right, okay, so that's how it really kicked in.
And that's how it kicked in. And I said, "Mitchell, will you let me do my own thing? I mean, find what stories I'm compelled to tell?"
Do you wish you'd have done it earlier in your life? Or was it the right time?
Well, this goes back to the earlier question of whether or not I believe in destiny.
Okay. Oh yeah, of course it does, because if you believe in destiny, it was meant to be.
Everything was a building block leading up to this particular moment.
But you can still answer the question. You could still say, I believe in destiny, but perhaps if I had done it 10 years ago, it would have been a better time. We don't think that at all.
No, because the people who I met along the way, I might not have met.
Okay.
And in fact, meeting people and listening to people really do make a difference.
Oh, it's the best part of what I do. I mean, I love the films, and I really love the stories behind the films more. In a way, it sounds heretical to say this, but even more than I love the films, which is I like the reason they made it. But actually the best thing is meeting the people, because they've always got great stories to tell.
And you never know how the meeting of a person today is going to impact you 20 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some incredible stories, and I've said to filmmakers on a number of occasions, including one today actually. Sometimes you suggest to them that actually, have you ever thought about making a film about the film? Because a bit like Half Darkness for Apocalypse Now, the story behind Coppola's film for me is more interesting than Apocalypse Now, which is a great film. Let's not be about the bush. But actually, I want to know why Martin Sheen had a heart attack. I want to know why you decided to shoot in the Philippines. Why it was so difficult to make the film, because you don't. Okay, you get a sense of struggle when a film is made. You can see that on the screen. You don't really get to see the struggle unless you know what happened behind the scenes. And I love that. I love to know what drove a filmmaker to get past all the obstacles in their way. They might be financial, might be physical, spiritual, I don't know, logistical, who knows. But that's the hook for me. And the thing that makes a film really, really interesting. So it's the story behind the story and the person.
Absolutely.
Or people's. you know, your subject matter is fascinating, and I totally understand why you made the film. But actually, and like I said a moment ago, it's a bit of heresy. But actually, I want to know why you made it and how you came to get there. You know, and now you've told me, of course, you know, making the films you want to make. And yeah, I find that very interesting. So it's not really about me, but I've gone off piece that I always do. So forgive me.
But there's no short answer to really my life story that brought me to this point.
You sound like you've had a fascinating life.
Thank God it has been.
You must have had an amazing life. Things you've seen.
Well, it's meeting people, dealing with people,
Yeah.
coming from a home where respect for all was part and parcel of daily life. And those are lessons I hope I'm teaching my children and my grandchildren and my audiences.
Thank you. No, that was wonderful.